Hi everyone, my name is Daniel Ainalis. I'm a Senior Research Associate at the Centre for Sustainable Road Freight, and today I want to talk to you about how we can decarbonise the UK's long-haul road freight using an electric road system. So today's presentation is based on a white paper that we published on this topic in July last year. And there's a link below if you'd like to access that paper and read more about it. But today I'm going to provide a brief context of the problems and challenges with road freight in the UK. I'm then going to present a UK electric road system for HGVs. I'm then going to present some preliminary business cases to see how an electric road system would compare to a green hydrogen solution for heavy goods vehicles. Then going to discuss a UK ERS feasibility study that has been that the team has been working on since July this year, and then I'm going to wrap up with some conclusions and future work. So everyone knows that road transport is a significant source of carbon emissions in the UK, and around 2/3 of this is made up of passenger cars. However, HGVs contribute around 18% of all road transport carbon emissions, and this is despite there being a considerably less number of HGVs on the road than there are passenger cars or even light duty vehicles such as vans. And in fact, the HGVs actually contribute around 5 to 6% of the UK's total carbon emissions. And future projections by organisations such as the ICCT have found that as we move out to 2050, we're going to see a significant increase in heavy trucks on the road moving freight around in terms of ton kilometres. And while we need heavy trucks to move our freight around and they're far more efficient than using a number of smaller vehicles, we need to find a way to decarbonise them. So there are three main technology pathways or alternatives for decarbonising HGVs that are currently being discussed. The first of the three is battery, well, they're all battery electric, but the first is to have a large onboard battery in the HGV and to augment it with rapid and fast chargers to be able to refuel within reasonable amounts of time for deliveries. The second option is to use small onboard batteries in HGVs and then to have an electric road system around a country or region so that these vehicles can be able to charge on the move and not have to spend significant time stopped for charging. And this system presented is a Siemens e-highway system, which is an overhead catenary very similar to those found in trains and tram applications. And the final option is hydrogen fuel cells. So this is a battery electric HGV with a electrolyzer on board to convert the hydrogen into electricity. And so the first and third options have a lot of significant drawbacks, and we've done a lot of research in the centre to look at what is the best solution for decarbonising HGVs and road freight. And what we've found is that the Siemens e-highway, or an electric road system, and in particular the Siemens e-highway, is a system that we think is the way to decarbonise HGVs in the UK for a number of reasons. One, this is a mature, scalable and shovel-ready solution that's already been trialled in Germany and Sweden, for instance. By having small onboard batteries, we're minimizing the amount of critical resources we need to make batteries and other things like electrolyzers that all, have a footprint associated with them and use, critical raw materials. But also in terms of energy usage, it is the most efficient solution and doesn't require high power, so high powered charging. And one other point, even though we think this is the best solution, having an e-highway as a backbone for the UK's road freight does make it technology neutral, so that if operators do want to have a larger onboard battery, or if they do want to have hydrogen fuel cells or another alternative power source, then they can have that. So the e-highway system will enable that choice for the final bits of decarbonisation. So now I want to talk about this proposal for the UK electric motorways system. And this obviously uses a Siemens e-highway, the overhead catenary. And just to go into a little bit of detail about what's involved in that, is we've got obviously the catenary wires hanging over the slow lane in the motorway, and this is being supported by poles and arms on the side of the road, and the vehicles are installed with a pantograph system and this little tower unit at the back, so that they can draw current from the overhead lines and use that to propel the vehicle directly and also charge the battery on the move. And so our proposal for HGVs is to have a UK-wide electric road system with around 7,500 kilometres of e-highway infrastructure. We've spec'd and costed some heavy goods vehicles that would be suitable not only for the final deployment of the system, but also during the tricky transition period where you might have patches of the network that are not built out yet. And this 4-phase program we think could be completed by 2040. So what does this proposed UK electric road system look like across the country? To start with, we want to have a pilot project, which we'll discuss later on, to de-risk the project and understand how an electric road system can fit in with current UK logistics practices. Then the first build out will really be 3,000 lane kilometres at a cost of around £5.5 billion, but can almost cover 50% of all HGV kilometres. And you can see there it covers around London some main routes from the ports of, say, Dover, Immingham, Liverpool, and Felixstowe. Traveling between, you can travel from Wales to London to Liverpool to Yorkshire and out that way, and also Scotland. We've got some coverage between Edinburgh and Glasgow. The second phase continues on with another £5.5 billion of ERS, but really starts to connect up the UK and starts to fill in some more areas. So at 8,000 lane kilometres, we can cover 3/4 of all HGV kilometres and around half of the carbon emissions. And then finally, if we built a fully fledged 15,000 lane kilometre ERS for £19 billion, we could cover 97% of HGV kilometres, and this would provide carbon savings of around 65% compared to today. We've also spec'd vehicles for each phase. And they all have, a smaller onboard battery with a pantograph to connect to the ERS and a range extender that can be used to provide resilience, for instance, when the network is not built out or not operational, or they're traveling to some far off remote place where they need a bit of resiliency there. And these can be run on biogas or biodiesel. We then had a look at the economics of how this could work in comparison to green hydrogen for HGVs. And so some of what we looked at was in comparison for the ERS and green hydrogen, the capital and maintenance costs for the infrastructure, the sale of electricity or hydrogen to these entities, and can they achieve a required payback of 15 or 20 years, and what impact that has on the fuel price particularly. We also looked at from the fleet operator perspective, and we did the purchase price of the vehicles and the fuel price from the infrastructure providers, and we want these vehicles to have a payback relative to diesel within 18 months. And if we do this, this will ensure that fleet operators are keen to get on to decarbonisation of their fleets, and it will mean it's affordable for them. And then finally, we examined what impacts this has on potentially recovering any revenue, because once diesel fuel duty goes down, it's not coming back. So we wanted to see what that looks like under both scenarios. So what would this revenue distribution look like under all these assumptions? So if we look at a vehicle operator who can get a payback in 1.5 years, buying electricity for their vehicle at 24.8 pence per kilowatt hour, what's the breakdown of revenue and who does that go to? So in this scenario, we've got a portion that goes to the DNOs as part of, on top of the wholesale price. The infrastructure provider has their margin that they sell to pay for the infrastructure investment. And then because the system has high efficiency and uses least amount of energy, we've got a large amount of headroom under certain conditions that can then be used by the Treasury as excise, so they can increase the amount that they take of revenue to try and replace lost diesel excise duty. So if we quickly show you what all this looks like for the different infrastructure payback periods going across the screen, and then for different wholesale electricity prices vertically, what that looks like in terms of the government revenue or subsidy. So the green is the diesel, so you can see that changing as as we roll out an ERS and decarbonize. And there's various amounts of electricity tax that can be recovered depending on what the price of electricity is that's sold to the operators, and then what that available headroom will be. And so we can see that while we can't recoup 100% of the diesel fuel duty, there are some circumstances where if we have some cheap electricity or cheaper electricity, there's a considerable headroom to recover almost 3/4 of that. And if we look at the hydrogen side, what that looks like, there's a considerable shift to subsidies from the government. And while that decreases over time as the infrastructure is rolled out, it doesn't reach a positive revenue. So it's a subsidy for the length that we looked at. Finally, I just wanted to briefly discuss our feasibility study on the electrification of UK road freight that we're currently working on. And you can see we're working in a consortium with Costain, Scania, Siemens, and Possible. And the aim of the project is to deliver a feasibility study and system demonstrator program for zero-emission heavy-duty road freight. And so this has been running since July this year, and we're expecting it to finish our project in March 2022. And so what we're really trying to do in this feasibility study is design a demonstrator program that is detailed, that includes a plan for the costs of all the planning, construction, and operation of the system. and also the design of experiments. So what do we want to do in this demonstration program that will help us answer the questions of can we electrify the UK logistics system? And so as part of that, we're really looking at an integrated logistics environment. So not just the long haul, but also looking at urban delivery vehicles as well. So some of the things that we're working on as part of this feasibility study here at the SRF is work package 2, which is scenario exploration and site selection for the pilot program. And my colleague Chris will speak to you in detail about that following shortly. And also we're looking at system-wide considerations. So what does that final system look like in the UK and how do we roll that out? So this poses a few challenges that we really are trying to get to the bottom of in this feasibility study. So what they are is, the first is that we're trying to really understand what's happening in UK logistics, what's the reality of that, what's the optimal length of ERS network versus onboard battery size versus static charging infrastructure. This is a challenging topic that we're currently working on to try and understand. And we want to really spend a bit more time refining and tuning our economic models to help augment this. That will play a role in the reality of the logistics system and what's the optimal mix of ERS network and charging. So thank you for your time, and I'll be around after this session to answer any questions.